Namaste, family. Reverend Dr. Patricia Keel here. And today is the 7th of June, 2020. We're living in extraordinary times, and I felt so challenged to prepare and to speak with you today. And yet, it all is the right and perfect experience, not only for me, but hopefully for those of you who have an opportunity to connect with our community at Unity of Richmond East Bay in Northern California. I've been doing a series of talks on a book by Emilie Cady. It's called Lessons in Truth, and my copy won't look like your copy because it's very old. I got it in 1992, and it's been a Bible for me over the years as I've embraced the teachings that Unity has brought into my life. It was written in 1896 by a woman who was a homeopath. She was a healer in her own work, but beyond that, she was someone who deeply felt and knew and experienced the presence of spirit in her life. And it was her powerful presence and the way that she wrote about her connection and helped others to make that divine connection that prompted Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were the co-founders of the Unity movement, to ask her to write this book, this series of lessons. Originally, I think it went into their magazine. So we've been working on these lessons for the past 6 weeks, and this is the final series that I am speaking on. And our focus this week is on chapter 11. It's called Spiritual Gifts. And I've been excited to teach this lesson for a long time, and yet as the past couple of weeks have unfolded, experiences in our world have been so traumatic and challenging for all of us that I've questioned myself as to whether I should stick to the topic or like go off and really do something else. But I've been really guided to stay with the powerful presence of these teachings. And you can see and feel this is challenging for all of us right now, to be in our spiritual presence, to be in the power of our faith, and to feel the anchor and the rock that is the Christ consciousness. In times like these, we need an anchor, and we need that anchor to hold. It's an anchor of the soul. It's a different anchor than what we throw out in the world. And I used to be a boater, so I know what it means to throw out an anchor. And when you need an anchor, when you need to stay steady and into the wind, when you need to keep yourself from wandering and crashing into other people's boats or rocks or docks, we need an anchor. And in these times, we all need an anchor. And I feel so blessed in my own life to have found that anchor, which is the power and the presence of the Christ, the presence of God's teachings, and the blessings that they've come through to me and to many of you as Charles and Myrtle Fillmore have shared them, and again, as my beloved friend Emilie Cady has shared them. So I'm gonna lean on the anchor that's the only anchor I know in these times. And it's really interesting because there's a passage in this chapter that I think relates so powerfully to where we are in our life right now. I mean, we're in such a powerful transitional time where we are being called to really feel, see, know, and experience our oneness. We say in Unity, there's only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe. God the good, in all, through all, and over all. One presence active in my life and in the universe, active in your life and in the universe. One presence in me and in you, and in every human being on this planet, in every rock, in every plant. This creative life presence that we know as God, or as we know as spirit or collective consciousness or divine presence, mother, father, creator, source, higher power, Christ consciousness. However we know this, we speak this every Sunday. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe. There's only one presence and one power active in your life and in the universe, in the world today. And so feeling that experience as we go through these times of the virus that is impacting one presence and one power, the oneness of who we are, indiscriminate. We have to also embrace the many other ways that we may have seen ourselves as separate, felt ourselves as separate, or as other people have seen themselves as separate, felt themselves as separate, which is what we are witnessing in the incredible injustice, violence, mistreatment, the racism, the social, political, economic injustice that we are currently a part of and experiencing in our world today. So Emilie Cady, right here in this chapter, says, when these transition periods come in which God would lead us higher, should we get frightened or discouraged? We only miss the lesson that God would teach, and so postpone the day of receiving our own fullest, highest gift. If in our ignorance and fear, we're just hanging on to the old grain of wheat that we can see, not daring to let it go into the ground and die, lest there be no resurrection, no newness of life, nothing bigger and grander to come out of it. So this is what we're talking about here. And I want you to really own it in your own life, however that shows up for you. It's been, for me, a week of really examining what does it mean, as Emilie Cady shares with us, to embrace the spiritual gift that is mine to embrace. So I'm asking you to be open to see and to know and to experience in a full body way the spiritual gift or gifts that are yours to embrace in this time of deep transition, and to be willing, as she says, to let go of that wheat that no longer, let go of the thing that you've been holding on to that must die in this time. And we can see that as a call to our culture, to our country, to the systems and the powers that have held in place injustice, racism, inequality, poverty. We can see this in our culture, but let us look and see it inside ourselves. This is what we're being called to in this time. Emilie Cady says, you are here as a vessel for some purpose. If when the time comes you let go cheerfully, without humiliation or shame or sense of failure, your tense, rigid, mortal grasp on some particular form of manifestation, such as healing. She's talking about a spiritual gift that we may have. And what she says in this chapter is that during this time in the late 1880s, the spiritual gifts that people thought were the most important were the gifts of healing. She was a healer. And Jesus did a lot of healing of the physical body. But what she's telling us is we have so many more incredible gifts to give to the world. And yes, healing is one of them. So are we willing to let go any kind of humiliation, shame, or sense of failure, or any sense of rigid expectation that it should come in one particular way for us? And I think this is an important thing. I know it's been for me this past couple of weeks, is there a certain way that I'm supposed to show up in the world? If I take on all these kind of labels that I've given myself, am I supposed to show up in this certain way? And what does that look like? Does it look like the way somebody else shows up, who's a minister, who's a unity person, who's got a doctoral degree, who's 73 years old, who's a grandmother, who's a mother? Does it show up in the way that it shows up for them? Or how does it show up for me? How does it show up in my life? when I do what Emilie Cady reminds us that's ours to do. Our greatest work, she says, will be done in your own God-appointed channel. If you will let Spirit possess you wholly, you will have the highest will done in you and through you continually, and you will be moved quickly by it out of your present limitations, which she says a half indication always indicates. In other words, if things aren't really flowing for us in our life, if we're not really feeling that flow of Spirit in our life, it's an indication that we're not in our right channel. We're not focusing in our God-appointed channel. And it's time for us to know that this new seed that wants to be nourished and planted, it's time for us to know that it's time for it to be demonstrated, to be manifest, for us to claim our God-appointed channel. And how we do that, we turn to the presence, the divine presence within us. We seek that presence. We wait upon God. In some cases, the waiting takes a while. You know, she says, wait upon God quietly, earnestly, but constantly and trustingly for days, weeks, perhaps. Let him work in you, and sooner or later you will spring up into a resurrected life of newness and power that you never before dreamed of. So I've been kind of waiting. You know, I'm not wanting to make this talk about me, but I can't do it without sharing some of the things that have emerged for me in the past week and a half. I've been feeling my white womanness in a community that's not just like me, in a country that's not just like me. And I've been really wondering what's mine to do. I've been falling into this trap of believing that as a human being that I'm a human doing. And finally, about, maybe 5 days ago, I got the message that Emilie Cady was trying to give to me. And I got it from another powerful friend and teacher. And that was that for me to really anchor myself in this time to all the things around me that I feel so called to shift and change and be a force for good and great justice, power, strength, love, connection in the world. For me to do that, I need to connect with the gifts that I've already been given in this life and to give them out, to be willing to give them in the world for the good of humanity. And for me, my gifts are being a spiritual teacher. So I do meditation. I offer meditation. I do it a couple times a day, actually. And I teach meditation classes. I'm a minister to this church as a speaker and as a support for people on the board and for those who need prayer support. And those are the things that I'm called to do. But what's happened for me during the past couple of weeks is I've been open to a listening field that I've never opened myself to before. I've been called into a group of ministers to listen to some Black women who are grandmothers like me. And I've listened to them share about the pain that they experience in speaking to their grandchildren, trying to explain to them what it means to be a Black child in our culture in America. And I felt that pain, a pain that I never had to go through as I talked to my grandchildren or my own children for that matter. I listened to one of our congregants last week talk about the fear that arose just driving down one of our beautiful roads in the East Bay and feeling that fear come up in the body because he was being followed by a police car. This is something that as a white woman, I've never experienced, I've never known. And in my limited consciousness, I've never sat and listened and asked, what is it like for you to be a woman of color and a grandmother and a mother What is it like for you to be a Black man in our culture? I listened to the funeral of George Floyd and heard his family speak about the nurturing they received from their mother. What a great, extraordinary gift it was to have a brother like George who welcomed everyone, a family that was feeding 30 or 40 children. And I got to see something that I hadn't ever seen before and felt before. I listened to Reverend Sharpton and just felt the power of what he was offering in that eulogy. It opened me up in a different way to be present and be connected, just to simply listen. And that's what I feel is mine to do right now, is to listen and to be a call, a clarion call for the presence of the Christ consciousness. Yes, to pray. Yes, to tune in every moment to those higher callings that we each have as we feel the presence of love, as we feel that sense of connection, a sense of connection that's totally colorblind. And yet, at the same time, being willing to pray and move my feet to do the things that God is calling me to do as the vessel that is me. And I'm calling you for the same reason. For you to uncover and discover the spiritual gifts that are uniquely yours in this time, this precious time. In this time of transition, a global transition, when not only are we called to change as a country, changed in our culture, changed in our law enforcement, in our legal system, changed in our politics, in our economics, changed in our spiritual communities, how we show up, how we share with one another, how we give and how we receive those spiritual gifts, change in our families, and change in our hearts individually as we connect more powerfully to these spiritual gifts that have been given to us and flow to and through us over lifetimes. This is a clarion call for connection. It's a clarion call for us to put aside things that do not matter in our lives and to find what matters, to find the heart of what matters in ourselves, in our families, in our spiritual community, in our collective communities. Unity of Richmond East Bay, we are a small community when we look at our membership, but if you look, we represent many different cities and towns all over the East Bay and beyond. So we have impact that we make with our presence, with our consciousness, with our bodies, as we stand in a place of high consciousness and peace, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and through the words that we're called to speak. So find it for yourself today. Find it for yourself moment to moment. I invite us after the service today to be in a deep place of listening. Perhaps not finding, not even looking for the answer, but simply to be willing to listen and to feel in and connect with one another from a deep, deep place of anchor that is that rock of our conscious connection to the God presence within. In times like these, we need each other. In times like these, we need to call upon our highest selves to be the Christ presence. And sometimes in times like these, it involves a long period of listening and waiting in the silence before we're called to speak, before we're called to take action. But when we've given the divine presence, the God life, the Christ consciousness, that opportunity to settle into the body, into the bones, into the cells, into the heart, Whatever we do, however we speak, will come from a deep place of connection. It will be the brain of the heart that is speaking and doing, reconnecting us one to the other from a deep place of faith, trust, wisdom, and especially a place of love. So I am sending you my heart today, trusting and knowing that sometime, hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to sing together, praise together, pray together, celebrate together, make a difference together in our community, and enjoy our beautiful sanctuary at Unity of Richmond East Bay. But in the meantime, let's tune into that Christ presence, as Emilie Cady is reminding us, and trust the presence to allow whatever is being born in you to come out with grace, with ease, with power and strength as you walk through these times of transition in your own life, in your family, in your community, in our spiritual community, and in the world, speaking and saying and doing exactly what you've been gifted in this lifetime to be. Namaste, everyone. I look forward to connecting with you after our service today.